Well, today we have the April meeting of the District 23 Zonta Says Now think tank. And I welcome everyone here today to this meeting from all around District 23, and also welcome our guest speakers today as well. We've got quite a lot to get through today, and there we go. We have our two speakers, and then we'll go through our international, district and local news. But first of all, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands in all the places that we meet today and pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. And if you'd like to put in the chat line from where you are, where you're speaking from today, that would be great. And I see Vicky's already started it with Tasmania. That's great, and that's wonderful. We usually recognise Aboriginal leaders at this part of our meetings, and today I just want to draw your attention to the Wiyiyani Thangani National Summit that's scheduled to take place in May, and it's going to provide a platform for Indigenous women to engage with a diverse range of private and public stakeholders on matters of self-determination, economic justice, healing practices and climate change. And the theme of the summit is "We Are the Change," and it builds on the landmark work of the Wiyiyani Thangani report, which put a lens across the strength, knowledge and culture of First Nations women and girls across Australia. And it's to bring together First Nations women with decision makers from across government, community, academia and business. Now, this event has been put together and will be hosted by June Oscar and also by Michelle Deschamps. So we just wish them all the best for that amazing coming together. Now, we always like to remind ourselves of the links between increased greenhouse gas emissions and gender inequality. And we use this steam train to describe the links. The train was developed during the Industrial Revolution at a time when humans began to increase their greenhouse gas emissions into the atmosphere. Increased greenhouse gas emissions have accumulated to form a blanket around the Earth and causing the global warming and more extreme weather events. And these extreme droughts, fires, floods, storms trigger social disruption, causing millions of people to be displaced. And this disruption magnifies any existing inequality, including gender inequality. So Zonta Says Now seeks to stop the train by working at both ends of it, by taking climate action to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and closing the gaps in gender equality. And we use three tools to achieve this. We have our website, our think tanks, and our framework for action. And we've developed many resources along the way to help us learn how to build a better world for women and girls through taking gender equal climate action. And these materials can be found on our website. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Bev, who is going to introduce Amanda. I'll stop the share for you, Bev.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. And I'm speaking from Melbourne, which is Wurundjeri, and I see, Amanda, you're also in the same lands. So it's great to put, well, I knew what you looked like, but you didn't know what I looked like. But I'm delighted, everyone, to introduce you to Amanda Lamont, who is the co-founder of the Australian Women in Emergencies Network. And some of you were with me at the UN Women's Luncheon last year when we heard Amanda speak. And you stayed in my mind, Amanda. And at our last think tank meeting, we were talking about the role of women in emergencies. And afterwards, I remembered again your speech and looked up my notes, and I contacted Carol and I said, I think I have a good speaker for our next meeting. And you promptly responded to my request. So thank you very much. So everyone, Amanda is the co-founder of the Australasian Women in Emergencies Network, and she's chair of Australasian Women in Emergencies for Climate Action. Amanda has an established career in disaster resilience and emergency management, including extensive paid and volunteer experience with governments, communities, NGOs, and in research projects. She has deployed regularly in disasters with Australian Red Cross and as a firefighter. Amanda is passionate about promoting and celebrating the critical and often understated role that women play in disasters, and she strives to build awareness of how disasters and climate change impact on women and girls. And I think she's also going to give us a glimpse to an exciting new project that's to be launched in Victoria soon called Girls on Fire. So please join me in welcoming Amanda.
Thank you so much. Oh, and claps. So nice to be here. And you know, I feel so good already looking at all of your faces. I have hope and confidence in our future when I see people like you coming together and spending time in your busy schedules to think and share and discuss ideas. So I almost had little tears in my eyes when I saw all of your faces popping up, because it really does warm my heart when I see, and I'm going to say it, when I see women coming together, anything is possible. And I really, truly believe that. And I'm so grateful to hear about your group, and I've had the chance to read a little bit more. So I'd like to hear more, and I'd love it if we could see some ways that we can actually support each other, because that's what we're all about, supporting and helping each other. So for those that did hear my talk last year at the UN Women's International Women's Day breakfast, I will not go over too much of the same ground, but I'm going to tell you a story at the start, which you will have heard at that. And that was about a woman who was very unrecognised during some bushfires in the Adelaide Hills back in the 50s. And on that day, terrible fires in all of Southeast Australia, and particularly in the Adelaide Hills. And her husband, Julie, went off with all of the other men and jumped on the back of their trucks and fire trucks and went off to fight the bushfires. And she was at home with her 4 children, all under the age of 10. So whilst the men were out busy trying to put the fires out, the fire actually encroached upon the house where this woman lived with her children and where she was. And it actually got so close that she had to grab the 4 children and jumped into their dam on the property, and they all sort of went under the water, and the fire passed through. So I like to tell that story because people did die in those bushfires, and a lot of land was burned. So it was a pretty big fire time. But no one knew really what she did. No one talked about it. She wasn't on the front page of any newspaper. To be honest, she probably didn't even talk about it much either, because she just did what came very naturally and instinctive to her. She saved 5 people's lives on that day. And again, it was unsung and unspoken about. And that's sort of when I talk about the role that women play in emergencies and in life. There's so much that we do that we don't even think about, that doesn't get talked about because we're not necessarily wearing a uniform. Now, the interesting thing about this woman is she's my grandmother. So my father was one of the children that she saved on that day. And I'm just so proud. And I didn't know her well. She died when I was young. So I never really got to know her, but I talked to my aunties and my father about her and the story. And I'm so proud that that was my grandmother doing something that she just did. She just got on with it. And no fuss, no bother, looked after the kids and saved lives. And, you know, personally for me, I might not have been here if not for her. So that's the story about women in emergencies. And it really does, it is the reason why I was so passionate about the Australasian Women in Emergencies network. We started that 5 years ago on International Women's Day at a UN breakfast, where a group of 10 of us had a table like you might have been sitting at, and the focus was around women in humanitarian work. And we suddenly had this idea that there was no network for women who worked in the emergency and disaster sector in Australia, and maybe we should set one up. So we asked around our trusted networks around Australia and said, we're thinking of doing this, what do you think? It was 3 of us that had this idea, and we were supported so much, and everyone came back and said, absolutely, this is a gap and it's needed. We're desperate for this. So we set up the network. We sat around a coffee table for a few months, planning strategies. What are our values? What are our missions? What is our purpose? And we eventually, after about 6 months, came together in around Australia. We had different groups set up. And we had a big event in Melbourne where we sort of launched ourselves with our logo and our name. So we thought we would be celebrating 100 members at some stage in the future, and we thought what that might look like. But really, within 6 months, we had 500 members, and then within 12 months, we had over 1,000, and now we have nearly 2,000 members. And we also changed our name from the Australian Women in Emergencies Network to the Australasian Women in Emergencies Network, because we got a knock on the door from New Zealand, of course, saying, what about us? We'd love to join. So we are Australia and New Zealand. And in my various travels, I've also spoken to others within the Asia Pacific region and more broadly. And I think there is an appetite for groups of women that work in emergencies to establish networks as well. So why did we do it? There's lots of reasons, and it comes from different angles. And I talked to you about my grandmother. Patricia Rose Lamont is her name. And one of the key things for me is that often we celebrate lights and sirens and uniforms in emergencies. And that's where a lot of the money goes, unfortunately, because a lot of the really critical work is done before and after the disaster, and often by people that don't wear uniforms and don't have the lights and sirens and don't have the media attention. And from my career in emergency management, there is no doubt in my mind that the most important place we should be investing ourselves and our resources and our time and our money and our thinking is in preparedness and in recovery. And not surprisingly, alongside that are women. So when you look at the emergency management sector, predominantly men that put on the uniform and jump on the fire truck or on the back of the SES vehicle or fly in the planes firefighting, and they get a lot of attention. So when we think emergencies, we think response, we think men, we get the words like hero used, and it really does not promote nearly strongly enough all the work that's done in preparedness and in recovery, which is, we're talking 1, 3, 5, 10 years after the event. There is a lot of work that's done in recovery, and those preparedness and recovery elements of the emergency management spectrum are actually predominantly women. So it's women that are playing roles at the before and after, both volunteers or employed. So at the Red Cross, you know, we talk about male-dominated sector of emergency management, but actually in the Red Cross, it's mainly women. And the roles that we do at the Red Cross, we are in evacuation centres and relief and recovery centres. We're knocking on doors, assisting people with their preparedness plans. So again, going back to the Women in Emergencies Network, it was to recognise that women are firefighters, and women get involved in incident management teams, and women are leaders, and women are commissioners and chiefs, and women do all of those roles. But there's also all of the other roles that are not recognised nearly enough. So our network was to celebrate, promote, recognise and support the role that women play in all elements, strongly in the space of the male-dominated sector, but really importantly, that as we try and open up everyone's eyes about the key roles of before and after disasters, and that's where women are doing a lot of fantastic work. So that is why we established our network. And a little bit about what we do. We're strongly, the first 5 years has been a lot about networking. So what we've done, and COVID was really interesting because it really enabled us to create a strong connection for women that were feeling very isolated. And so obviously emergencies include pandemics and epidemics. So those of us that work in emergencies that look like fires, floods or storms, were also doing emergency work in the pandemic during COVID. And so women were really desperate to have people to support them, a group to connect with, to talk about, to share ideas. And it was just some company for people who were really feeling stretched and through their personal and professional lives. So networking has been important. We did a lot of face-to-face. We've got chapters in all of the Australian states and territories and in New Zealand. So we were doing meetings face-to-face. Then COVID, we all came together collectively and met online together. Post-COVID, we've not really re-established our face-to-face nearly as much. I don't know how you have found it, but people seem to be staying at home a lot more. So we're doing a lot of networking. We bring guest speakers in to talk. We've got a mentoring program. We have partnered up with an organisation to offer scholarships for women who want to study in emergency management. And we have a lot of resources and information that we share through our newsletter, like job opportunities, and events and conferences to go to. And we come together and put in joint abstracts and submissions to speak at conferences. So just out of interest, I was at an event recently and a man came up to me and I was giving him some information about the Women in Emergencies Network. And he said, oh, I know all about it. I'm a member. And I went, oh, that's great. He said, I've been a member from the start. I think it's fantastic. And I said, that's awesome. And it's so weird when you meet somebody who knows the stuff that you do on the side, but you've never met. And he said, you know, I have a question. Can men come along to your events? And it was a really interesting question because, of course, yes. And we have had, particularly there's one man, a Māori man from New Zealand, who has come along to a lot of things and provided great input and value because the matriarchal society in New Zealand in the Māori culture is really strong. And so for him supporting the wahine was really important to him. And he's just an incredible spirit and source of energy to be around for us. But anyway, it prompted us that we needed to let our male members know that they were welcome to come along. And so next Tuesday night, we have an event which is called Allies of Awe. So we're actually inviting as many men to come along to that online session to talk about the important role that men can play as allies for women in the sector. Now, we got ourselves a bit caught up in knots because the word women is binary and it's not either a woman or a man. There's a lot else and a lot in between. So we're going to talk about intersectionality and we're going to talk about the fact that it is a binary term, but that everybody is welcome and we are allies. But we're going to see how that conversation goes because some of our committee members were really strong, didn't want us to have this conversation because we weren't prepared because we didn't know what we were talking about because we're missing out a whole cohort of people who don't identify as a man or a woman. But my view on that is, let's acknowledge that. Let's recognize ourselves as beginners with a beginner's mindset, empty our cup and know what we don't know, and then do as much as we can to know. So that will be an interesting conversation, the Allies of the Women in Emergencies Network next week. The other thing that I'm mentioning, because you're talking about climate, is obviously the impact of climate change on women and from a gender lens around the world is well documented, well reported, well known. So we think it's really important for us to add our voice to conversations around climate action. So I set up a chapter of our network called Women in Emergencies for Climate Action. At the moment, we are actually rallying our voice behind others who are doing a lot of work. I am inherently lazy. I don't want to do things that others are doing. So whenever I see somebody else doing a great job, I'm just sticking our logo and our support behind them and saying, you go girl, we love that. So at the moment we're adding our voice to the strong work that's already being done. We're obviously quite close to the Emergency Leaders for Climate Action, ELCA. So some of you may have been aware of that group. The ex-commissioners set up a group. They struggled to talk about climate change in their roles because it was political. So as soon as they retired from those roles, they actually had a strong voice and talk a lot about climate change now. And in my career in emergency management spanning over 10 years, when I was working at Commonwealth government levels developing climate action strategies for the emergency sector, I really struggled to get a united voice because some states like New South Wales, and I'll say it, couldn't talk about climate change, definitely wouldn't talk about anthropogenic climate change, so wouldn't sign this document that I'd prepared. But Tasmania wouldn't sign it because we didn't say it. So it was very hard to get everyone together around the country behind a document that said we need to do some mitigation adaptation strategy. But in the emergency sector, you know, we are on the front line. We are seeing, you know, the changes in the seasons, the bushfires that are happening whenever they happen, not necessarily between December and March, severe and extreme storms and cyclones and floods. And what we're seeing, and you know this already, that these events are happening, they're more extreme, they're more frequent. But the thing that we talked about would happen 5 years ago that we're seeing now is they're overlapping. So we're actually still in that recovery phase of some floods that happened in the Northern Rivers or on the East Coast. And then we've got some bushfires on the west of the country. And then we've got floods in the north. And now we've got cyclones in the north and in the west. And before we know it, we've got El Nino coming back for bushfires again. So what we're seeing is we're exhausted. We are actually constantly on call. A lot of us work as volunteers with full-time jobs, full-time lives, and we don't get the rest time. So the rest time is getting shorter and we're being asked to step up more and more. So come in, my grandmother, Patricia, and the role of women again. What I believe as an emergency service worker, responder, and in my career, both volunteer and paid, we need people to support us. We need people in communities and community groups to actually recognise their role in emergencies as first responders. And you've probably heard that before. The first responder is the person standing next to you, or your neighbour, or the car next to you. It's not the truck, the fire truck with the lights and sirens. We are the second responders. And we are going to see this play out more and more when we need to be getting alongside people that are on the ground. So it's neighbours coming and rescuing neighbours in boats. I actually think that's okay. I think that is a fabulous community spirited model, and we should expect our neighbours to come and support us. That is not exceptional. That is not heroic. That is what we do as human beings. So I believe that we need to really build up the knowledge and awareness and confidence of people to help each other and be there for each other in the first instance. Going back to women again, going back to our network, when we asked women what their skills were, this is what they said, right? This is what they do inherently. They connect, they interact, they talk, they help, they share. They're not just thinking, what can I do? It's what can I do that helps everybody else as well. These are really generalizations, but I'm going to hope that you indulge me in saying that, that these are the feminine, let me say feminine as opposed to women. These are the feminine attributes. That is that caring and sharing and supporting. And so we want to build on that to create this resilience at a household level, at a street level, at a community level. I'm just going to check my notes really quickly. So I talked about the women and climate change at the moment. We're really keen to explore partnerships with organisations to see how we can help others. Maybe that's a conversation that we have. I'd really love to talk to you about some really practical tools and skills around development, disaster preparedness and resilience, right? So we have so many skilled and excellent women all over the place. What I would love us to do is actually sit down with groups and say, here's what emergency preparedness looks like. We can actually provide those skills. Are you prepared? Are you ready? Do you know what your risks are? Do you know what you value? And here's some things. Psychological first aid. This is what I train others in Red Cross. This is a fabulous life skill to have. How can you support others that are experiencing stress and trauma? We would love to pass these skills on to groups like yours, because that's how you are better prepared, and then you pass it on to others. So we know how to do that. We've got some pretty good ideas about what good resilience looks like, and we would love to share that a little bit more. Quickly about the Girls on Fire. So a woman that I used to work with 5 years ago, she is the senior station officer in New South Wales in an urban firefighting context. She got a Churchill Fellowship to go overseas and work out how they were increasing diversity for women in the emergency sector. She came back to Australia and set up the Girls on Fire camp, which is what is happening in North America, where we take young women between the ages of 12 and 19 away for a day or a weekend, and we teach them skills in emergency. We dress them up in firefighting uniforms, and we get them to put fires out, roll hoses, cut cars to pieces with the jaws of life, and do rescue and teach them CPR. And we are basically, there's a lot of things. We're actually building the confidence and awareness that these are the roles that women play in society as well. And maybe they would think about it, because a lot of women who are now career firefighters or career in the sector say, I wish there was something like that when I was young, because I didn't know women could do that. So we're exposing women to other women in uniform, doing all of these things, building their public speaking, their leadership skills, their confidence, getting them really getting their hands involved in getting aware of that they do have, even though they're petite and they're slight, they can do all of these things too. They go back to their community members as advocates for emergency preparedness, and they build community spirit. They become leaders in their community. So it's this opportunity for them to actually grow as role models in their communities from a young age, and maybe get careers as firefighters or in the SCS or something. So the Girls on Fire camp, we had our pilot in Victoria in Creswick near Ballarat a few weeks ago. We've now got a lot of people lining up to deliver them in their area. So we've got one in Kangaroo Island in South Australia at the end of the year. We're going to Gippsland around NIDOC week, so we can actually get a strong cultural knowledge program and have women come along and talk to us about their cultural awareness from Indigenous communities. And there is an all-women CFA brigade out in Gippsland that we're hoping to come along and teach us some beautiful skills. And we'll also continue to be rolling out programs in other places in Australia. So that's really exciting. And the Women in Emergencies Network is an already developed mentoring program for these young girls if they want to connect with them. So I know I've spoken a lot. I've been watching the clock. I think that's about 20 minutes. I had some PowerPoints, but I really don't like doing PowerPoint when I'm talking on Zoom because I find it distracting. But if you want me to flick through anything or put anything up on the screen, I promise you it's all there. But I much more prefer to look at your faces than look at my silly slides.
Brilliant. That's brilliant. Did anyone have, I mean, it's, you've covered so much ground there, and there's so much areas that we can cross-pollinate. It's absolutely amazing. Did anyone have any specific questions that they'd like to ask Amanda?
I've got one.
Yes, Terrell.
Within District 23, we have obviously one of our major programs is the mental health first aid. And so, Amanda, would you see the psychological first aid as being part of that? And particularly if we could then incorporate a section on the need for upskilling in that particular area of emergency and disaster
Yes.
and resilience and recovery.
Yeah. I suspect they're probably pretty similar programs. Now, the Psych First Aid program we used at Red Cross was based on, and I used to work at World Vision actually, and one of my colleagues developed a program to support the support workers in the field because they were actually dealing with people that are suffering incredible stress and trauma in displaced camps and in civil wars and things. So the workers were not actually getting the support themselves or knowing how to support. So the program was developed around some fundamental skills. It's around 5 principles of establishing hope, creating safety, connectedness, calm, and efficacy. So there's 5 basic principles, and actually I think they're life principles. We talk and support our friends every day when they're stressed. And I think that I am pushing our brigade to make sure that all of our firefighters have got the basics in psychological first aid, because we're standing alongside somebody who's just been in a car accident or the partner of. We need to be able to talk to them to help them and do no harm, but also we need to know how to look after ourselves. So self-care is a really key element of psychological first aid. I would say whenever you can get your hands on some of that training and when you have conversations, that's got to be a key part of it.
Could you repeat those 5 elements, please?
Yeah, so it's hope is the first one. So instilling hope, then calm, safety, self-efficacy, but we've sort of said self or community efficacy. So control is the sense that you have control of the situation, and connectedness.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah, so if we can actually, and we do that through this thing called look, listen and link. So basically it's around deep listening. So it's not about us deciding what that person needs, which is the classic mistake from helpers. I know what you need. You need shoes, you need a blanket, and you need a warm cup of tea. We got it. What we do is we stop putting that lens of help that we need, that we think people need, and we sit and listen to people. So we actually ask them, who do you need to talk to? Who do you normally ring? What do you need right now? What information do you need? So it is actually through a system of inquiry and deep listening, we sit with people and we witness their pain and suffering, and then we actually assist them with the tools for them to take the next step. So it's very much, efficacy is really, really important. Yeah, so those things, I think, just having these conversations with people, you can see light bulbs. When you talk to people about this, people go, yeah, I can help people if I actually ask questions as opposed to just give them stuff.
And here in WA, we've just had another devastating cyclone that went to Cat 5, I beg your pardon, and wiped out, one particular small community. And Seroja is still, the effect of that is still devastating in Kalbarri. Just wondering, what is the likelihood of being able to have any of these programs online so that those people in regional and rural areas can actually have that training? Because it appears that they're the areas that are sort of so deeply impacted when we have these disasters.
So I'm just typing in the chat, Phoenix, Australia. So okay. That is, that's the Australian Psychological and mental health support agency, they've renamed themselves to something simpler, Phoenix. They have some online training, and sometimes it's available for free. And I can actually find out through my connections if I can actually see what we can make available to your group as well, and see what's there. But have a look at their website. Actually, the CEO lives on the mountain on the other side of the Dandenongs from me, so we catch up every now and again. And she's been very supportive of the Women Emergencies Network by making things available for free, and also letting us know. So I will let her know that I've spoken to this group and see what they've got coming up. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Did we have any other questions? Just checking. Let's make sure I can't see all the faces at once. Yes, Beverly. Bev.
Well, thanks, Amanda. But I just wanted really to add a comment to your fast-paced talk. There's so much information you've got there, but what I love is that your organisation does much the same as Zonta, that we will align our goals and services with people who are already doing it, and Zonta International partners with UN projects and selects from UN projects to align ourselves through Zonta International, and with our local groups as well. So I can see going forward some partnering with sections of your organisation as well. And I'm sure Carol's going to say thank you, but I thought I'll just pop in there and say that I think it's a great match for Zonta. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, Amanda, I totally replicate everything that Bev said. There are so many things that we can learn from each other, and I would really like to pursue conversations further with you, because internationally we're trying to set up a framework of initiatives that can help women around the world, so as we are better prepared and respond to disasters, and developing the framework to enable that to happen, and the tools that could be applied to make that to happen, the progress and the processes, is what I really would like to have further conversations with you about, because I think that you can really provide us with some guidance and support. And because what we want to try and do at the international level, we want to cascade throughout the world, but we tend to do it top up, bottom up, all different ways, you know, top down, bottom up. So I think we can have some really good conversations to see how we could work and learn from each other in the future. Thank you.
Yeah, I would really love that. I too think that we can learn a lot. And again, we don't want to replicate. We really want to get alongside and support other groups. And cross-pollinate. You know, I love that. I'm a beekeeper, so every time people talk about pollination, I love it. Yeah, cross-pollinate ideas and see what's already been done. My mission in life is to take what others have already done and take it perhaps the next step, and then hopefully somebody takes that and takes that the next step. So building on top of our work. Yeah.
Well, our theme today has been one about the story of the geese for this meeting, and how you gather all the geese together, and they reckon if you fly in formation you get 71% more efficiency. So I reckon that we're all flying in formation here, so I think it would be great.
I saw that.
Wonderful.
Just one last question, if I may. Amanda, Zonta advocates, as well as being an amazing service organisation throughout the world. And if there was one thing that you felt we could and should advocate for to support your organisation to fast track things, what would it be?
You know,
it's a tough question, I know, I'm sorry.
It's just that there's two. I'm going to say two things. Somebody asked me once if I had a magic wand, what would I have? It's trust, right? So to my mind, what's missing in the emergency sector is trust. Communities don't trust government, and government doesn't trust communities. So if we had trust, we would just work together a lot more. Secondly, this will not be news to you. Women are missing from the decision-making table because women without experience, a piece of paper, a background in whatever, are not considered as having any ideas. And the opposite is true. These women are embedded in communities. They have been doing community resilience and emergency management through a different lens forever, because it's what they do. So I think that from an emergency perspective, I would advocate to understand that the only way we're going to build disaster resilience is at a community level first. We cannot have this coming from Canberra. Canberra turns up in communities because the media and the communities expect them to be there, but they're useless. They don't have the power. They don't have any legislative responsibility in community. So they end up going because people expect it, yet they get in the way. So the one thing is, get out of our way, please, and get alongside us. Every tier of government, it's Commonwealth, state and local, but I'm a huge fan of local government. They are the ones that I think should have double pay and double resources. Yeah. Please arrive into the community and say, how can we help you? Not stand aside, we're here to save you. That is where we go wrong. So yeah, the one thing, the advocacy thing is get out of our way. We are actually born resilient as people, but and just ask us how we can help. And to my mind, from a Commonwealth perspective, their job is to give out the money. Yeah. Don't get on the ground. Just stay in Canberra and sit at your computer and send the money and do some stapling of some things every now and again. That'd be great.
Yeah. Thank you.
Very frank, very great. To the point.
Oh, well, I feel like I'm in a trusted group, I hope.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, thank you so much. And I think we'll give a round of applause to you, Amanda, for really igniting our fire on this one, if you pardon the pun. Thank you so much.
No, you're very welcome. I hope we keep chatting.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, I'll move on, and I'll just go back. Our next part of our program today, we have with us Joyce Urseg, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome Joyce to our group today. Joyce is from the I'm just going to move my thing over. Is from the regional coordinator for the Citizens Climate Lobby Australia. Now, some of you may know that I'm also an En-ROADS Climate Ambassador, and Joyce got in contact with me with that hat on, and from our conversation I thought, oh, Joyce, there's so much that our group would like to learn from you. And so we met up on Zoom a few days ago, and I said, oh, Joyce, we've got a meeting coming up. Do you think you could spend a few minutes and just explain to us more about the Citizens Climate Lobby Australia and what you do? And I had not heard of the organisation before. And when I went and Googled you on the websites and saw what you did, I thought, oh, we can learn so much from your approach of advocating for climate with all politicians from all parties. So I'd like to hand the floor over to you, Joyce, so as you can share more about what the Citizens Climate Lobby of Australia does. I've set up the screen so as you can just go into your own share screen and it should show up. So if you want to do a PowerPoint.
Thank you very much, Carol. I must say how much I did enjoy our conversation the other day. It was really, as you said, we had a lot of things in common, and I know our organisation is very small and that people haven't heard of us, but I guess that's why I jumped at the chance when you invited me to come here, because we do want to spread the word about what we do. There was so much in your talk there, Amanda, that resonated with me as coming from Citizens Climate Lobby as well, and so much to unpack. But I am going to use slides because I'd like to show people some other faces from our organisation as well, and to show there's a picture of something that I really need to share as well to explain what we do. But to start, yeah, we share a lot of goals and values, it seems. So that's pretty cool. It's all about empowering others and helping each other to kind of have a meaningful impact in the things that we do. So that's a starting point. And give you an overview of what I'll cover today. I'll do a bit of a background on CCL, as we call it, Citizens Climate Lobby, and a bit about what we do here in WA, what activities we involve ourselves with, and then our platform. So the main thing that we talk about when we go and have meetings with, for example, MPs. And then last of all, the next steps, if anyone was interested in kind of like jumping on board and helping out occasionally. So but my path here was because I've always been interested in the environment, and I've been a member of Australian Conservation Foundation for about 35 years, and kind of all through those years kind of kept hearing about the environment and gradually a bit more and more about climate. Once my kids grew up and I had more time to read and research, I kind of got to the point where I thought, gee, something's going awry here, and we, you know, all of us need to kind of step up if we can. And I had time, so I've kind of joined a few groups, but then Citizens Climate Lobby, and I kind of was really thrown in the deep end because no sooner had I joined, but they had a conference in Canberra, and so I flew to Canberra, never been there before in my life, and you know, learned a lot about CCL in the first couple of days there, but in the subsequent 2 days, we were just in Parliament House having meeting after meeting after meeting with MPs. And so talk about jumping in the deep end, it was quite a fast learning curve, but thoroughly enjoyable and empowering, and it kind of got me hooked. So that's how come I'm here. So if I can share screen now, can you see this?
Yep, it's coming through. Yep, we're there.
Okay, cool. And so yeah, the mission or vision is that to create the political will for a livable world. Now, it's a huge, big statement, as these things often are, but that's where we start from. But the guy who started it was an American called Howard Marshall, and he was working to alleviate poverty in third world countries. And he ended up watching An Inconvenient Truth, which many of you may have heard of and probably seen, but it really kind of spurred him into action because he realised that what he was doing, helping people in these places, was really going to count for naught if they were going to get washed away by floods, or they were going to be experiencing extended periods of droughts, and food security was going to become a problem. So he returned to the US to start this thing, which became Citizens Climate Lobby, and it was about empowering and encouraging people to form groups in their local areas to go and speak to their elected representative and let them know about their concerns. So that's kind of where it started from. And then a guy from Perth, Rod Mitchell, oh sorry, I'll not go past that one. Rod Mitchell from Guildford here in Perth came across CCL, and he brought the idea to Australia. He really liked the respect, the values, and the idea that it's all based around building relationships, ongoing relationships, and that appealed to him. So he brought it here to Australia. So CCL is big on personal power. Finding common ground with people, often on an opposing side of an argument. So that's a little bit about asking questions, which you mentioned, Amanda, about asking questions to find out where people are. Questions are such a really handy tool. So finding common ground, and again, as mentioned, that mission about political will for a livable world. And the way that we do it is, as I said, kind of getting people together in their local groups to go and talk to their elected representatives. It's about breaking down barriers with them, highlighting shared values about place, which is really crucial. But if you come on a meeting with an MP or another business or community leader, there's just one maxim that we have, and that is that you must find something positive about the person that you're going to meet. That's the only thing, because we find that if you go in with that mindset, with that kind of positive mindset, that the meeting is often more productive. But I should have kind of mentioned about those values that you can see there on the page. When we're strictly non-partisan, that's a very important part of us. Focus on this policy, which I'll explain to you, about reducing emissions, relationships we've already touched on, optimism. Rod here is just the embodiment of optimism, and integrity. We always are able to back up our arguments with sound evidence. I've already mentioned personal power and diversity. We welcome anyone to come along and join us. So just as an example of the kinds of things that we do, here are just some photographs of some meetings that we've held over the last couple of years. We've got a couple more meetings coming up in the next month or so, and we're always looking for more people to join us on these meetings from a variety of stances. So this is the top four there are all with federal MPs, and we do concentrate on federal MPs. and the bottom two photos are with state, at the state level here in Perth. It's lovely to see. In the top left, we can see, you know, what was really exciting for us was this time last year when we had the election and we saw how many women came through into our parliament, really on the basis, on their platforms of climate and integrity. And Tanya Lawrence there at the top left was one of them, but Kate Cheney in the middle left there, very strong on climate and integrity issues. So we've had a couple of meetings with them, which was really lovely. We've met Patrick Gorman, top right, Perth electorate. Ken White, we saw several times, middle right there. He's gone now, but was a very interesting man to talk to. And the bottom two, as I say, are state MPs here. But that's the kind of thing we organise a group of like from 3 up to about 8 or 9 people, and just talk about our policy. So getting to that, it's really about trying to, like, decarbonisation is really key to what has to happen. But how best to talk about that? That's the hard part. We want to support renewable energy. We want to preserve forests. We want to maintain biodiversity, electrification of things, circular economy, all those things we want much more of. It's like everything, everywhere, all at once, like that new title, that new movie title. But the heart of the issue is reducing emissions. I mean, that's the crux of the problem. And this has to be done in a way that positively affects lives of everyday people, or else it won't succeed. That's why we advocate for a policy which does both of these things. It reduces emissions and it helps people to be a part of the decarbonisation process. And a good analogy is seatbelts. Left to individuals, there would have been some success and some lives saved, but it was the legislation that was brought in that managed to have the most effect around saving lives on our roads. So this is I guess what we like to do is go and talk to MPs about our concerns. We offer a solution, and this is our solution, and then we share this experience so that we kind of try and mainstream. At the same time, we try and mainstream the idea of going to speak to our MPs, because they are, at the end of the day, they are our lawmakers. So this is a graphic which kind of explains the policy in a very simple way. And I'm very happy to take questions on this because there's a lot behind this. So at the end, if you've got questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. But basically, in a nutshell, you can see on the left, we've got the carbon pollution. Now, we know if we measure that at the mine or the well or the port, so where it first enters our economy, we know the carbon content at that point. So we can measure it and we can put a fee on that. So it's putting a fee on pollution at source. Then the government collects that fee, doesn't keep any of it. It distributes it straight back to every household in Australia. So they are just an instrument for collecting this fee, and then it becomes a dividend. That's why we've called it the Australian Climate Dividend. It becomes a dividend for householders. And then householders are able to use that to help offset any rises in costs in things, in high carbon intensive products. So petrol, power, etc. So in that way, it incentivises two things. It incentivises the fossil fuel companies to produce less carbon, and it incentivises householders to purchase greener, cleaner products. So that, in a nutshell, is the platform that we advocate on. So, you know, in summary, this is just a screenshot from our website. These are the attributes of this policy. We talk about its efficiency. Economists tell us that a price on carbon is the cheapest way to get the emissions reduction that we need. We can regulate and we can put it all on individuals to reduce their own carbon footprints, and we can leave it to the market. We can do all those things, but the most impactful thing we can do is put this price on carbon at source. It's popular because of the dividend component. It doesn't increase taxes because the government takes it straight back to the people. It's fair. It targets, or can be structured to target, low socioeconomic and middle socioeconomic groupings. So because they are the ones, as prices rise, they're the ones that spend a higher proportion of their income on things like petrol and power. So they are adversely or negatively affected by something like this, but the dividend cushions them against that and compensates them for that. So it's quite targeted in that way. And the choice thing, I mean, it just gives everybody the choice to decide for themselves at their household level how best to use the dividend that they would get whether it's annual or every 3 months, however that was decided. So this is the economics term for this model is a carbon fee and dividend. You can see it in the top right green square there. Every economist knows about this, and every economist that we've come across says that this is by far and away the best way to deal with the problems we have with carbon emissions. It's fair and it's simple and it's effective. Now, if you want to know more about it, you can talk to me and all the people here who at Citizens Climate Lobby who might be able to answer your questions. You can go to our website, ccl.org.au. We've just become a bit more of a think tank, and we've just kind of put all the information we've gathered over the last 7 or 8 years since Rod brought this here to Australia and put it into what we've called playbooks. So that's on our website. There's a policy playbook where you can find out more about this policy, and there's a lobbying playbook where it's quite helpful to kind of show ways to lobby effectively. So that in a nutshell is what we do. I don't know if any of you are at all interested, just go online, have a look, talk to me or talk to any others in your state that already do this. We love to have more people involved, as I said. If you join, get our newsletter, read our blogs, etc., and just get involved at that political level. I hate to call it political level because I'm not a political person at all. I mean, the first time I was ever in a politician's office, I was in my late 50s. It just was not on my radar at all. But now I quite, given these skills that I've learned over the last 5 years or so, it's not as daunting as it once was. So that in a nutshell is it. If anyone's got any questions, I'm happy to answer them now if we have time. Otherwise, at a later time, whenever you think it's right, Carol. Thank you.
No, that's brilliant. You make it very human, and I love the whole approach of it. It's very personable and it's very equitable. How you sort of come together to have the conversations with politicians. And I just love the idea of you only go into the meeting if you can think about something positive of the other person. I think that's a great maxim to have. Were there any questions from people for Joyce? Sandra, you're on mute, Sandra. Just warn you. There we go.
Oh, thanks, Joyce. That was wonderful. I'm just wondering, what's been the response of the politicians that you've been talking to? Do you feel like sometimes they're hollow responses?
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely. I mean, it's a very hard thing to talk about at that political level because it's become such a hot potato in the last 20 years. I mean, at the beginning of this century, it wasn't. There was bipartisan support for doing something substantive to do with climate, but over the I guess the last 10 years or so, it's become very difficult. So what's the response? I mean, they agree that from an economic standpoint, it's a good policy, and from a social justice viewpoint, it's a good policy, but it uses a lot of political capital for them. So they have to really it will take a lot more of a groundswell, and that's what we try to do. I guess that's what our role is, to try and improve and grow that groundswell of people who are going to their politicians and saying, look, if you get brave enough to tackle something as difficult as this, we'll back you. And in fact, after one Canberra conference, one of the comments from one of the MPs was, keep going, we need you, kind of saying, yeah, we get it and we understand, but until more people get behind this, it's just really hard.
Yeah, I find that difficult. I think politicians have forgotten they're our servants.
Yeah.
They're supposed to be representing their electorates, but they don't bother to come and ask. They just, their party says do this and then they fall. I don't know what's happened. So yeah, we do need the groundswell. I agree with you. Yeah.
And isn't that the beauty of all these independents coming through, because they are not beholden to a party line. So when we go and talk to politicians, they are very cautious about what they say, and they might kind of let slip sometimes that yeah, they get this, but they must stay within that party, you know, box. And that's the beauty of having a higher percentage of independents there now, because they will act upon what their constituents say. So people like Kate Cheney here in Perth doing a fantastic job of listening to the community, having lots of forums, having lots of experts. Like she had Ross Garnaut come in and speak recently. He's a real, you know, you probably know Ross Garnaut, talks about the superpower that we could be. So, you know, collecting all this, and I think the more women we can get in, the more climate advocates we can get in, but that won't happen until once they get there. We have to kind of show that we get this, and that if they speak up, then we will back them.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
That's good. I do find that politicians are very cautious, and they tend to reflect the messages that they get from people that they talk to. So we need to have more people talking to them to make them braver.
We've got to tip those scales, don't we, so that it's more in our favour. Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Tyrrell, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I do. With regard to the efficiency section, Joyce, and the fact about, you said there, put a price on carbon is cheap. And it's hard to corrupt. It seems to me that we've been talking about pricing carbon now for years. I agree with you, it's not politically expedient, but I perceive that that is possibly one of the biggest sticking points so far. And until we can actually get that pushed through, that this is not only economically viable, good heavens, you know, everybody who turns their brain on can see that. But being able to get through to the politicians, we have to make sure that it doesn't happen, because the big businesses involved obviously don't want to lose that profit margin that they've got. And we keep being told that if we do that, then they're going to put their investments overseas. Well, I don't necessarily agree with that. And I think that your group is absolutely amazing. I'm also president of the University of the Third Age here down in Bunbury. And we do have people within our group who are very, very worried about what's happening for their children and their grandchildren and the future. But that the need for it to be political but seen as non-partisan, I think, has been one of the biggest sticking points for so many non-government agencies for so long. And if we can somehow, even through your organisation, learn from you ways in which we can convince our members. Politicians can't change what they don't know needs changing. And until we tell them what we need. Thank you. Would you care?
That broke up for me a little bit.
Would you care to comment about how else we can actually be speaking to politicians and talking about the need for there to be not only pricing of carbon, but for us to be saying the things that need to be changed so that we can get some action?
I think one of the main things is to have this respectful, ongoing relationship with your MP. And now that can be really hard, especially in a place like Bunbury. And I know the MP there, and it's very similar to my MP. We'll never really change their minds on this kind of thing. So in areas like that, it's hard, but the squeaky door does get the oil. So if we can encourage more people to go and speak to someone like Nola Marino about this, they would have to, in the end, take note of it. And even, you know, sometimes it's not just the MPs, but it's their chief of staff or their diary manager or their advisor who's sitting there next to them taking notes. We've often found that those people are almost as important as the MPs, because they sometimes, you know, they move around and they go and work for other MPs, and sometimes become MPs themselves. And this is a slow burn, you know. The trouble about it being a slow burn is that time is running out. So that's the kind of like the candles burning at both ends kind of thing. You know, it's really hard. We have to get more people speaking. Yeah. And if we go in there too antagonistic, we don't get any of our any of our points across at all. So that's why I like the CCL way, because it really encourages us to find that common ground. And there was a great example. Sorry, am I taking too much time, Carol? Just one more story.
That's fine, go.
Where a young girl was in one of our groups going to speak to a politician here in South Perth. And when she first went into this thing, she was dead against this man. And you know, with some reason, he'd been there a long time. He was kind of pretty, not doing too much, especially in the climate space. But she did. One of the things we have to do is get a biography on the MP, and that was her task, to go and do a biography. And so she learned a lot more about him, and she learned that that he had a pretty tough upbringing, that he had done a lot of work with you know, disadvantaged people in our community, and so her views just through doing that biography changed. And so when she went into that meeting, she was a lot more. She was kind of, you know, she didn't have the barriers up, I suppose. She was more willing to listen to his point of view. And I just think that the whole CCL ethos is all about trying to meet people where they are. Yeah. And I think that's important when we've got such a divisive topic talking about.
Oh dear. Now that's brilliant. Very good advice.
I
love the idea of getting a biography of the MP. That's learn to see them as people, and it's a great opening for a conversation. That's brilliant. I'm sure we shall be in touch more, Joyce, and I think that members, you have groups in most states, don't you, Joyce?
Every single electorate, we would love to have a group in every single electorate, all 151, but we tried that and it's too hard and we can't do it. So we've kind of shrunk right back now to a kind of small group targeting 30 to 40 MPs. But having said that, if you are interested in speaking to your MP, we are very, very happy to kind of support you through that process. And we've got strong groups in New South Wales and strong in WA. Elsewhere, not quite so much. But we would love to have more.
But I'm sure that between you, you'd probably have someone that could help online if someone wanted to have some advice from someone in the group before going to meet an MP. And I think that for us, that's great to know that opportunity exists, which is super.
Yeah, we'd love to have you help us with this.
Yeah, no, that would be great. Well, thank you so much, Joyce. There's no other questions, are there? Just double check, nothing there. Good, that's good. So thank you again for your time today, both to Joyce and to Amanda. We've learned so much from you both, and I'm sure that we can have some good ongoing dialogue with the pair of you to help further our cause about gender equal climate action. So we can learn so much. So my grandmother always says you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So we like to try and listen twice as much as we speak.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, everybody. It's so good to meet you all. I hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye.
That's great.
Just 1 minute.
Well,
I just wanted to add that our 2 guest speakers and Carol, I had an apology from Heather Phillips, who's a member of the Zonta Club of Melbourne's Southeast. And it's a fairly small club. And Heather apologises. She had something else to do this afternoon and couldn't join. But she said it's always great to hear sort of via the newsletter what's happening, and what has happened today will be shared through the newsletter and will go to those club members that couldn't attend. So thank you both again from me.
Thank you. Have a great day, everybody.
That's
Bye-bye,
great.
everyone.
Yeah,
Thank
we
you.
have some more things to go to the meeting. You're more than happy to stay on. We're only on for another sort of 20 minutes or so, and but you're welcome to go too. I'll just put my screen back on sharing, just so as it just keeps me on track. And thank Joyce again for her talk this afternoon. You probably noticed on the presentation today, I'm just double checking that you can actually see it. Just
yeah, we can.
That we have a new logo, which Zonta International has put together. And the logo, we've got the square version and we have an oblong version. And so I've been working through the leaflets and things on our website to update them. So I'll upload them again soon. We also have a section on the Zonta International website, which has got a few pages associated with it. This is our starting point. It will grow, and but it's at least we've got some presence now on the Zonta International site. You'll notice that one of the areas is a virtual art exhibition, and you'll hear more about that in the incoming weeks. We've also got a fact sheet that has gone online now, and this has got, you know, the introduction, the problems, the solutions, what we can do, but more importantly, it's got 46 hyperlinked references, so as you can actually see the sources of the information and the stats that are used. I wanted to remind you that we had the Climate Change 2023 synthesis report came out recently, and Antonio Guterres, he really sums things up well. He says humanity's on thin ice and that ice is melting fast. And he talks about it being the rate of temperature rise is the highest in 2,000 years, concentrations of carbon dioxide at their highest in at least 2 million years, and the climate time bomb is ticking. But he also points out that the IPCC report is a how-to guide to defuse the climate time bomb. It's a survival guide for humanity and shows that 1.5 is achievable, but it will take a quantum leap in climate action. And there's one other line he says in his speech when they launched this report was, demanding others move first only ensures humanity comes last. That just made me sort of shiver when I read that statement. But anyway, what he'd also pointed out in his launch speech was that he's called for an acceleration agenda to the Climate Solidarity Pact. And amongst these items he's requested is for developed countries to act now and bring forward their net zero limits to 2040, to have no new coal and to phase out coal by 2030, and to cease all licensing funding of new oil and gas, stop the expansion of existing oil and gas reserves, and have a global phase down of existing oil and gas. Net zero electricity generation by 2035, and shift subsidies from fossil fuels to a just energy transition. And for all governments to prepare detailed energy transition plans. And finally, to speed up climate justice efforts, which is around financing adaptation, loss and damage strategies, and having early warning systems so people have more time to prepare when disaster strikes. He's calling people to come to a climate ambition summit in September in New York. And of course, we do have our first global stocktake of the Paris Agreement at COP28 in November in Dubai. But I also saw this webinar on the Zonta International website recently by Lily Adamo, and she's based in Africa. And she was pointing out that in Africa, it's the place in the world where they have the least access to electricity. So she's saying that in the developed countries have already stopped funding for gas and oil-based power stations in the developing world. And she says the newspaper reports in Africa say things like, the world needs to quit oil and gas. Africa has an idea, rich countries go first. So in Africa, they haven't had the opportunity to even have electrification in some countries. And so many women in particular are still relying on candles and wood burning in the house and collecting wood, etc. And so what she's saying is that you've got to look at your climate initiatives in the context of the countries where you are. So it may be that instead of us, for example, in Western Australia, expanding the Scarborough gas fields, that we actually have opportunity for those carbon emissions to be used in developing countries where they can actually use it to bridge the gap until more renewable energies are more affordable and are online. Because she points out that poverty is a big barrier to actually achieving the climate goals around having renewable energy accessible for people. Anyway, it's worth a look. So you can find that online. And we've got International Mother Earth Day on the 22nd of April. And the UN actually has an app, this Act Now app, which you can play with. They've also got a WhatsApp element, so you can have a discussion app on your phone, and it sort of builds up the climate argument, and it's a very, very useful tool. Anyway, treat yourself on Earth Day and have a look. When it comes to district and club news, I just want to play this video from Emma Cutting. Anyway, Emma Cutting was the awarded the Women Taking Climate Action Award, which is done through the Zonta Club of Melbourne on Yarra. And Emma provided this video as a thank you for the award. And it's really nice to hear it. So I'm going to play it for you, and I hope it works.
Hello, everyone. I'm really sorry to not be there tonight to thank you all personally, but at least this video can be shown. Thank you so much to you all for awarding me the Zonta 2022 Women Taking Climate Action Award. I have been and still am so stoked to receive it. When I started out on this street gardening journey back in 2016, creating my first tiny street garden outside my rental home, I had no idea what a huge impact street gardening would have on me and the community. Through creating beautiful, safe gardens using barren, underutilised patches of mainly public land, I saw a way to address huge social and environmental challenges, including the biodiversity crisis, mental health crisis, urban heat island effect, soil health, livability, water retention issues. And really, all of these in some way or another come under the banner of climate change. I had no idea of the immense challenges I would face, but conversely, I had no idea of the overwhelming support I would receive, not only from the community, but from many, many experts and scientists. The challenges? Well, in August 2020, I had to take action against our council, City of Port Phillip, after they went back on their support regarding a small set of community street gardens. This palaver resulted in council inquiries, internal and external, and miscommunications with the community that resulted in me being taken to court by 2 locals. After huge community support, the gardens stayed. My formal complaint was eventually acknowledged, and I received a verbal apology from the then CEO. And with me, luckily, being represented by an amazing lawyer pro bono, the baseless court case was withdrawn. But then, barely 1 year later, I had to fight council again. This time not just over a street corner, but over legislation that was to essentially ban street gardening on 360 acres of nature strips, after decades of it being allowed. This campaign was enormous. It included 3 levels of government, a huge campaign of letter drops, lots of positive media, almost 600 individual submissions to council, an 82-page document by myself on best practice regarding nature strip guidelines, which was backed up by 6,000 signatures and 20 letters of support from incredible scientists and specialists, 10 months of my life, and about 40 volunteers helping at various times in the campaign. And the community won. We won. We set a precedent. We changed legislation to enable locals to continue their street gardening journeys. And as a flow-on effect from this campaign, about 6 months later, I am now talking to multiple councils regarding changes in the public realm, including nature strip guidelines. During this time, we also created over 70 gardens, planted over 8,000 plants, talked to thousands of people around Australia about street gardening, and I founded the Heart Gardening Project, a not-for-profit organisation that combines community, science and care to joyfully connect humans to humans, humans to nature, and nature to nature through street gardening. With the help of amazing partners and sponsors, we are now rolling out an Australian-first 8-kilometre ecology-centred community-driven wildlife corridor for native pollinating insects, connecting Royal Botanic Gardens Melbourne to Westgate Park. The aim is 200 Indigenous focused street gardens to be created by the end of 2024. These have been designed within council constraints, but not with council. Though I have, with the help of many, accomplished so much and overcome many challenges, there are still many challenges to be overcome. The main one being how to turn the Melbourne Pollinator Corridor into a successful and sustainable model within an exceedingly tight time frame that works within the UN Decade of Ecosystem Restoration, while keeping food on the table and rent paid. But having overcome so much, including more recently my husband leaving me and me becoming a single mum of a 4-year-old, I say bring it on. I thank you all for seeing and acknowledging the immense challenges I have overcome so far. It means a lot to me, as so much of my work over the years has been done alone. Early in the morning before my daughter woke up, late at night after she went to bed, weekends, all hours really. I have given so much and given up so much for this cause over the past 7 years. However, when I see my 4-year-old look lovingly at a flower or a native bee, or hold a praying mantis carefully with so much joy, it is all absolutely worth it. I look forward to many more years of positive climate action and to meeting you all at some point very soon. Thank you so much.
So Carol, I have done part of Emma's walk. It's not complete yet, the walk, but it is like what she's been able to do with partnerships is absolutely incredible.
Such a worthy winner of the award. She's just an inspiration, you know, sort of bringing all her communities together and working off that little bit of wasteland originally to developing that whole pollinator corridor. Absolutely magnificent. That's great. Well, congratulations to your club, Sue, to all those from Melbourne On Yarra Club for this amazing initiative. And it's really great to see that it's going to be taken on as a district award from next year. So
yeah, it is fantastic. Thanks to Sandra for her work in that area.
Definitely, that's brilliant. Anyway, just moving on. I get information from different members at different times, and this is from Val talking about Ballarat and how it's going to become a bioenergy hub potentially. But I just want to let you know a few other things that have been happening. I did an 8-minute video for area workshops that you might have seen. I actually had a really busy day on the 18th of March, where I actually had a wonderful day out presenting at the area workshop face-to-face in New South Wales with District 24. And at that workshop, I met Margaret Thomas. And Margaret, you're a guest, you're here today, aren't you? Margaret?
Yes, Janet, yes, I'm sorry, Carol, thank you very much. I'm here. Yes. It's great to be here.
Yes, it was lovely meeting Margaret. She has worked for the UNDP in New York and all over the place. So it's absolutely wonderful to have her join with us today, which is fantastic. So when I got back from being hosted so brilliantly by Bernadine at in District 24, she picked me up and took me out to the day for the workshop and brought me home, and Bernadine Guy. That evening I was doing an e-webinar with Sweden, with their Zonta e-clubs of Sweden. So that was a fascinating event as well. So it's a busy day. Then we've also some other business I want to cover with you. We talk about the safeguard mechanism, which was introduced by government. The Climate Council has a very good short video that you can watch to help you understand it. And be aware that the Climate Council currently has an open letter calling for zero interest loans to help electrify households. So that's an open letter that you can sign from their website. And that fits in a bit with the work that Joyce was talking about when you were talking about a climate dividend, because that could be one way of funding to have people having zero interest loans for electrifying their homes. While I was in New South Wales, I also took the opportunity of meeting up with Natalie Isaacs from 1 Million Women. So it's the first time we'd met face to face. So that was really lovely. And she's got some initiatives that she's is about to launch. So it'd be really good to watch the space on the 1 Million site, 1 Million Women site. And if you've not heard of them before, check out the Women's Climate Congress. Now, this is a group of women who they're just growing, and they have a charter for the climate, and it's a very well-based, very well-researched organisation. And they're creating an independent mediation team to create a national plan for climate action. So what they want to do is to have this independent team that can actually, instead of having organisations coming in competition, to actually facilitate collaboration. So as they all find the best parts of each other to work forward for getting a national plan for climate action. So check that one out as well. So finally, always trying to remind you that if you have a birthday coming up or an anniversary or anything like that, don't forget that the foundation can benefit from any donations. And if you're updating your will, just remember to keep a little bit of information about the foundation and the endowment fund with the documentation for your will. So when you do update it, you've actually got it to hand. And it's a very easy process. I did it myself recently, very easy. So our next meeting, I've put in the calendar for Saturday, the 17th of June, at those times. And so it would be lovely to see you all there then. But before we go, I just want to check if there's any questions from anyone, or if there's any comments that you wanted to have about today's meeting or future meetings. It would be lovely to hear them. Over to you.
Carol, this is it's 10 years, Joe Widoff here, 10 years since Bunbury went with the 3 bins and the FOGO, and so they're having little celebrations around the place. And recently they had a celebration of from a woman who's sustainability in clothing, really. She was you might have heard of her. I've written her name down here. It's a hard one to remember. Anyway, I went along, and it was a sustainability style workshop. Kiara Lowe Seidman, have you heard of her? She's a style counsellor. It's really blew my mind away. And what she said, and what the City of Bunbury young lady who introduced it, who organised the workshop, just an evening little get together, and it just made you realise that you know it's not all about buying or selling or giving away your clothing, because you know the Red Cross and the Good Sammys, they don't need all of that stuff from us. You know, it really made me think about clothing, and she's a really interesting lady, really good speaker. So she might be someone that we could contact one day and sort of see what she could bring.
Could you put her name in the chat line, Joe? That would be good.
I will, yes. She was actually going to speak to one of the schools down here, Minia College, and she was looking forward to it. But because she says that's the group, because of all the online stuff that young people buy, and they've got to have it because, you know, it's all the advertising. She was really looking forward to going and speaking with them, and I would love to have been a fly on the wall to see what the kids thought. But yeah, I will put her name in the chat line. She was interesting, very interesting.
Oh, great. No, that sounds good. No, it's always good to know who's out there. So there's so many amazing women doing amazing things. It's good to see what's around. Did anyone else have any other comments that they'd like to make? Can't get time to see everybody.
Just to say, a fantastic meeting, Carol. Really, very, very good. Thank you.
Those speakers today were just amazing. I mean, we've been talking, do you remember we had the meeting before last, we were talking about disaster preparedness, and we were talking about bushfires and being prepared for them all. Amanda ticked all the buttons there, didn't she, with regards to having the knowledge to help us to actually focus our activities to do something in that space better. Yes. And then we talked about advocating, and then we have Joyce with you know, that what they're doing is what we want to be able to do, you know, effectively. And, you know, being able to talk freely with politicians and build them into our network so as we know them as people and have a long-standing relationship with them, and so as we can actually build better things for the future. So I think that today we learned a lot from them, which was, I was very pleased with both of our speakers today. They were great. Anything else? Vicky?
Thanks, Carol. Just to thank you again for your wonderful presentation for our Area 5 workshop. Fantastic, thank you. And it went down like a treat. So good. And we're just at the crossover in our clubs, you know, with the AGM and new peoples and whatever, new just general changes all around. And so I'm hoping now that once things settle down, we'll be able to pick up and run with some few more wonderful climate actions.
Yes, you'll probably notice that with the website that it looks a little bit different. It got hacked a few weeks ago, so I had to readily rebuild it, and so I had to do it a quick and dirty. So, but I'll be reviewing it and making it a bit more connected coming as time goes by. But it was a little bit disappointing. But I'm slowly getting there. The Intercontinental think tank has been going very well, and we actually have another meeting tomorrow night. Well, it's 2 in the morning, my time, Monday morning. But we've been having talks by speakers from around the world in the think tank, so as we can get to know each other. Because in our think tank, we've met each other on and off over the years at different workshops and different meetings. And so we haven't got that level of I was going to say trust, for want of a better word, with those think tank members yet. So we're building that. And at last month's meeting, we had talks by a lady from New Zealand, Ghana, and Switzerland. And tomorrow night we have a lady from Bangladesh, Nigeria, and the USA. So it's really nice. But I do actually have the videos of those talks in a new little secret Intercontinental Think Tanks page on our website. So if you want to have a little sneaky look, you can. So there's no secrets, but it was just really interesting to see that. So you'll see that because we don't have a full Intercontinental Think Tank webpage where we can communicate, I've just created one on our own website for now until we get ourselves moving forward. But eventually it'll all work out. But I just thought you'd like to know that. So there's a lot been happening. Anyway, with that, thank you so much for all your participation today and your contribution. I think we've covered a lot of ground, and I look forward to seeing you all again online in June. So thank you so much. Bye for now.
Thank you, Carol.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.